Good afternoon and happy 2021 to all you guys out there. Hey, listen, I know that not only for our Philadelphia Eagles, but for everybody, this has been one trying year, 2020. And we're all looking forward to what 2021 has in store. Couple of things today, we're going to do a Talk to Him Tuesday again. Listen, there's just so much going on surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles right now that I thought it'd be only fair and right to open up the conversation to you guys, to answer your questions, touch on some of the issues that's going on with this football team. There's a lot to fix after the Philadelphia Eagles fall in the final game of the season to the Washington football team in less than dramatic fashion. There's a lot of conversation around what's going on, and Miles Sanders was on WIP today, and he pretty much communicated that no one was behind, none of the players were really behind the move to sit Jalen Hurts with an opportunity to win the game. Doug Peterson, for all intents and purposes, what is the guy going to say? Is he going to say, hey, yeah, we put Nate Sudfeld in the game because we wanted to tank? What kind of repercussions would that be, across the entire organization? I think everybody knows, that, when you watch that game, Doug Peterson was not coaching to win that football game. And I'm going to be honest with you, in a lot of ways, guys, I am somewhat, I somewhat feel sorry for Doug Peterson because I think, from the time that he became the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, that he's been put in a precarious position. He was the last coach that they interviewed. He was the last hire. All the guys that had interviewed before him had already been hired. He also did not have the opportunity to determine who his defensive coordinator was going to be. Harry Roseman had already hired Jim Schwartz to be the defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. And it seemed like some of these moves were made to ensure that Howie could control the situation and not find himself in the position, I should say, that he was forced into under Chip Kelly. So, Doug kind of gets pushed out there to be the guy to explain everything that's going on. I can't say with certainty that it was really his decision, to put Nate Sudfeld in that football game. But at the end of the day, when you're an employee and as a head coach, that's what you are. There are things that you're asked to do, and then you're the front guy that has to stand out and explain it to the world, even though that might not be what you really want to do. The big question mark as the season wraps up on a 4-11-1 season for the Philadelphia Eagles is the future status of your franchise quarterback, Carson Wentz. And there's been a lot of reports. A lot of reports have been going on about ever since week 16. Week 16 that Carson wanted out. Adam Schefter reported that Carson wanted out of Philadelphia, wanted to be traded. And then Adam Schefter walked it back, said that, hey, you guys took my comments out of context. And then right before this last game against Washington, it was reported that Carson Wentz would ask for a trade. He did not want to be a backup and did not feel that it was a situation where he should have to come in and compete for his starting job. And I've always said, I've said it all along. I've been critical of Carson, and I've been critical of him because of his play on the field this year. I don't think there's been a situation where I haven't been supportive of him, but when you play the way that he played throughout the last, through the first 12 games of the season, every bit of critique, every bit of criticism was something that was warranted by the fans, by the media, and there's always going to be, camps. There are people that are Wentz proponents, and they're going to find every excuse for why the Philadelphia Eagles did him wrong and didn't give him the support that was necessary. But at the other end of the spectrum, in football, to me, the eye in the sky doesn't lie, and everything revolves around how you play the game. So let's get to the details. You're talking about a lack of production at the wide receiver spot, lack of separation. You're talking about a decimated offensive line. And lastly, you're talking about an offensive coordinator who really wants to throw the ball and doesn't believe in a balanced offense that gives your quarterback the best case scenario to be successful. You guys have heard me talk about this time and time again, that I feel like most quarterbacks in the NFL need to have a run game, and you need to have misdirection, and you need to have bootlegs, and you need to have rollouts that gives your quarterback an opportunity to be safe, to give him options, and to be effective and efficient. Now, that being said, let's get into Carson Wentz's performance, because with all of those things being what they are, it still should be a situation where your quarterback has to be the guy that's making all the right decisions on the football field. When a play breaks down, and plays do break down, because in the NFL, you're playing against professionals as well. So sometimes the defense is going to win. Sometimes you're outmatched. Sometimes you're outcoached and out game plan. And sometimes, you know what? The other team just got better athletes than you do. They're just better, physically than you are. But a quarterback is the most important position on the football team. And that being what it is, he's got to be the smartest position on the team. He's got to be the guy that makes all the right decisions. Because I think at the end of the day, when a quarterback drops back to throw a ball, there's an internal clock. There is an outlet that's built in my opinion, to every single route that's run. There's an option to run. There's an option to throw it away. And there's an option to say, hey, I can't get away. Let's take the sack, punt the ball to the other team, and let the defense do what it does. So those are the options. And Carson Wentz got off to such a bad start. He was turning the ball over at such an alarming rate, even with all the things that were around him. He had those options at his disposal. Throw the ball away. When there's, 1, 2, 3, okay, I got to get out of the pocket. Take off and go. If there's an alley to go, get what you can get and get out. Scramble to prolong plays and hope that your wide receivers have the wherewithal to come back to the football. All of these things, all of these options, in my opinion, were at Carson Wentz's disposal. And he made the decision to try to push the ball down the field, to wait for receivers to get open, to not throw the ball in rhythm, not try to throw wide receivers open. And, listen, he even though he hasn't played since week 12, he's tied for the lead in the NFL in interceptions, having only played 12 games. He's had 10 fumbles, 50 sacks. Those numbers for a fifth-year quarterback can't happen. Now, I get it. Everything else around him was mayhem. But when you're the franchise quarterback, you've got to be the equalizing factor. You got to be the guy that, is the tide that raises all boats, that makes everybody else better. And he didn't do that. And then, I thought that Doug waited a little too long to make the change, because I think that the wrong thing to have done was to sit Carson for the rest of the year. But if you go back to the Cleveland game, you go back to week 9 or 10, and you insert a Jalen Hurts into the game for a half or for a quarter, and then you go back to Carson Wentz, then maybe you can salvage him throughout, a 16 games schedule, a 16-game season. But when you wait till week 12 to put your rookie quarterback in the game to start against the number one defense in the NFL, and he goes out and plays a heck of a game and gets the win that no one thought that he could get, and then he comes back the following week and he plays pretty well through the first half of that game, then the question is, okay, let's see what we have in this guy. The likelihood of us making the playoffs are slim to none, even though they were still in it when it was all, went right down to week 16, they were still in it. But at the end of the day, they weren't, even if they got in the playoffs, they were going to be overmatched by teams that are in the upper half of the league. Okay. So what do we get out of all of this? There's speculation that Carson doesn't want to be here. There's a report today that I was just reading that Carson, has stated that, hey, hopefully his tenure in Philadelphia isn't necessarily over, and he's mulling, his future. That's a good thing. Listen, I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts is the answer. You're talking about a rookie quarterback who basically came in, didn't have any kind of off-season, no OTAs, no preseason, no training camp. So when we begin to talk about this competition, and I think that in a nutshell is what this should be all about, because let's just be real, the Eagles don't have to do anything. I get people, on my social media feed, and they're like, hey, he's going to go over here and he's going to be a Pro Bowl quarterback next year. Listen, I left the Philadelphia Eagles through free agency. I know what changing from one organization to another organization is like. And trust me, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. The situation isn't always better. Now, from a money standpoint, it was a great move for me. But from a career standpoint, playing for the Arizona Cardinals for 3 years was not the greatest of moves for me. Because you never really know what's going on inside an organization until you're in it. So just understand and know that the Eagles don't have to trade Carson to a perennial winner. They don't have to trade him somewhere where he'll be happy. They don't owe him that. They owe it to themselves if he doesn't want to be here to say, okay, how much draft capital, how much in return on this investment that we made can we get back for Carson Wentz? That's what they owe themselves. They don't owe Carson anything. They already drafted him number one. They already made him the starting quarterback. They already paid him like the franchise quarterback, okay? And now they got a little hiccup in the road. And if it is true that he doesn't want to be here, that's disappointing to me. Because as a competitor, and some people feel like the quarterback position is so different that competition shouldn't be a part of a quarterback's job, that he shouldn't have to look over his shoulder, during the season, that, it should be his team. Listen, everything or anything that's worth having is worth earning. And Carson didn't get in this situation by himself, but his performance on the field is what caused the situation. Because if he played well, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be talking about everything else under the sun besides the fact that Carson Wentz was benched for the last 4 games of the year, and now he doesn't want to be here. But the truth of the matter is, here we sit, okay? And I feel like any quarterback, any player for that matter, that plays in the NFL, it's not your right, to be in the NFL. It's not your right to be a starter. If winning a starting position was all about privilege, then as an 8th round draft pick, you guys have no idea who I was as a Philadelphia Eagle. Okay, because as an 8th round draft pick, I had no privilege. I had no right to be the starter. The only thing that the Philadelphia Eagles owed me when they drafted me in the 8th round was an opportunity to compete for a spot on the 53-man roster. And I went out and did what I had to do to try to secure that. That's all that I'm talking about when you're talking about Carson Wentz. Okay? Go out and compete. If you think you're the guy, and this year was an anomaly, and Doug Peterson feels like he can fix you, okay, and your self-confidence is still where it needs to be, and you believe in yourself, then go out and compete against a guy who was a 2nd round draft pick 53rd overall. A guy who right now, when you compare quarterback skills, overall quarterback skills, you are more talented than. Everyone says, oh, all Jalen Hurts can do is run the ball. I'm like, I don't know what game you guys are watching. Yeah, he makes some bad throws. He makes some bad decisions. Isn't that to be expected of a rookie quarterback? But Carson Wentz has the leg up on this competition if he chooses to stay here and fight it out, because he knows the system in and out. He's a veteran. He's experienced. He's seen everything that there is to see, so he knows what adjustments to make. So why would you not stay here and compete? If, like I said, you really want to be here. And that's the gist of that situation. So let's talk about Doug Peterson. Listen, when Doug Peterson was first hired as the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, I wasn't sure about it. I pretty much listened to his press conferences and I had an opinion. I said, you know what, man? I don't think I'd follow that guy if he had a bag of gold coins slung over his shoulder with a hole in it. And I can remember when Mike Lombardi came out and said that Doug Peterson was in over his head as a head coach in the NFL. And I watched all the players, all the leaders on this team step forward and have Doug's back. And it forced me to stop and say, okay, maybe I'm looking at this from the wrong perspective. Because in order to be successful, a coach has to have total buy-in from the players on his team. And I said to myself, you know what? Hey, if these players come to Doug's defense the way that they have, if they believe in him and they shut down Mike Lombardi and everybody else who thinks that way, then maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I need to look at it from a different perspective. Because at the end of the day, it's about those guys believing in that coach to get it done and them getting it done together. Okay? So then I began to just step back and look at it from a different perspective. Do I think he's a good coach? I do. Do I think he's under immense pressure? I do. Do some things need to change? Absolutely. Does he miss Frank Reich and John D. Filippo? Probably. Because, for the last couple of years, he's been trying to replace those guys with little luck. I think they may have overdid it this year, because you look at his quotes where he said, hey, I've got to ensure that, from now on, that there's only one voice on the offensive side of the ball, and that's my voice, that everybody's clued into that one voice, that tells me that the guys that he brought in have been over opinionated over the course of this season, and it's caused a little bit of chaos, either in meetings or in how you deal with the players. Everyone needs to know, when you got 53 employees, everyone needs to know who the boss is when you delegate special teams, offense, and defense. Okay? Who is the top voice? Okay? And if that voice isn't Doug Peterson's, then sometimes other agendas get pushed in and cause dissension and creates chaos where it doesn't necessarily need to be. So at the end of the day, the question is, does Doug Peterson deserve to continue to be the coach here in Philadelphia? Jeffrey Lurie thinks so. Jeffrey Lurie thinks that Howie Roseman is the guy to fix this. And we're going to, as Eagles fans, we're going to have to just ride with it and see how it turns out. Hopefully Doug can make the requisite changes, in the offseason that allows this team to get better. In my opinion, those things are, getting Carson Wentz a viable and competent quarterback coach who is an authoritative figure, not a guy who Carson believes is on the same level as him. Bringing in a offensive advisor whom he trusts, whom he will listen to, and who he can collaborate with. A guy who, when he tries to talk Doug off the ledge, he holds some cachet in Doug's decision-making process. I think that's what they lost most in Frank Reich, that he could be a voice of reason for Doug Peterson in times where Doug may have been going off the rails, as far as, his ratio pass to run. And then obviously, we need to talk about what's transpiring on the defensive side of the ball. I guess, the Philadelphia Eagles will be forever indebted to Jim Schwartz and his contribution to bringing the first Super Bowl to Philadelphia. But, I've been pretty adamant about it. I still feel that way. I think that the brand of defensive football that we've experienced for the last 4 years is un-Philadelphia-like. That bend but don't break style, in my opinion, does not necessarily work unless your offense is hitting on all cylinders. And people will throw stats out about where they ranked every year and how good they look. But let me tell you this. I know playing for inept offense on the defensive side of the ball is extremely taxing. I also know that you don't have to have a great defense if your offense is scoring points in a prolific nature, okay? I played on the Denver Broncos in 1998, and I believe that team averaged 26 or 27 points per game, okay? You know how easy it is to play defense when you know your offense is going to give you a 14-point lead, a 21-point lead. They're going to average 28 points a game. You don't have to be brilliant. You don't have to be great. You just have to not mess it up. And the problem was when the offense was good, the defense looked good. So they kind of meshed and they kind of played off of each other. They complemented each other. But when the offense began to struggle, you could begin to see the cracks in the scheme of the defense, in the structure of the defense. Listen, this defense structurally was broken, because when you can continually contain week after week and not adjust to that and understand and see that teams are beginning to game plan the fact that you're not going to contain with your defensive ends, and you still refuse to make the change. That's a structural breakdown, that causes defenses to not be effective. So listen, I don't like to see anybody lose their job, but Jim Schwartz has made the decision that he's going to step away, and I'm happy about that. What I'd like to see, is the Eagles hire a defensive coordinator who has an aggressive mindset, that will come in and be a teacher for these young players. Listen, we're on our second DB coach since Doug has been here. We're on our fourth wide receivers coach, second defensive lineman. I mean, when you see coaches, coming in and out, that kind of tells you that something is not right. Something has gone astray. And when I watch these Philadelphia Eagles on the defensive side of the football play, it's troubling because I can see the technique and the fundamental flaws. And I know that when you're that flawed at a specific position, from a technical standpoint, that you don't have a shot at being the best defense that you can be. We saw it with the defensive backs. We saw it with, the linebackers. We saw it even at times with the defensive line. There's just certain fundamental things that you have to do in order to give yourself a chance, to give yourself an opportunity to be successful, because the rules have been bent and the rules have been shaped for the offense to dominate. So the less structurally sound you are as a defensive player, the more susceptible you are to the game plan of the other team. Listen, football ain't that complicated. Everyone wants to talk about these offensive gurus and, everything that they bring to the table and, this guy. Listen, they're not running anything that they weren't running back in my day. The guys are just faster. The tempo is faster. The guys are bigger and stronger. Those are the only difference. But what you're seeing with offensive coordinators now is not this great intelligence that everyone thinks it is. It's offensive coordinators pinpointing and finding the defensive inefficiencies and the technical the technical errors that are broken, and they're attacking them. Okay. That's why I always say the quarterback and the running back are the biggest liars on the offensive side of the ball, because they fake one way to get the whole defense to move, and they throw the ball or run the ball back the other direction. Why do they do that? Because they know that the linebackers and the safeties, their eyes are in the wrong place, and that the defensive ends are undisciplined, that when they see flow and motion go away, that they're going to chase it from behind. They know that they can come back and get the edge. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is a defensive coordinator that will come in and bring some structural integrity to the defense, so that whatever players the Eagles place on the field defensively have an opportunity to be successful. You just can't hand a player a playbook and teach him the X's and O's and think that he'll do the rest. Every player needs to be coached. Every player needs to be developed. And this is an area of grave concern for me on both sides of the ball, because you just don't see it. And I get it. You know what? At the end of the day, they don't have as much time. They don't have an off season like I had, from February to June, my rookie year, to work. They don't have, 2.5, 3 hour practices like we used to have, so their time is limited. So as a coach, you've got to create a toolbox that you can hand off to your players that allows them to spend extra time on the field, spend time in the off season, and work on the things that you as a coach don't have time to work on. And then you've got to figure out throughout the year, okay, how do I sprinkle in some fundamentals somewhere along the way? I get it. The week is short. You're trying to put in a game plan. You're trying to strategize and figure out, what works and what doesn't work. But at the end of the day, if a player isn't prepared and doesn't have the tools to succeed, I don't care how good your scheme is. I don't care what it looks like. It's just hard to be successful. So I'm looking forward to the change on the defensive side of the ball. and hoping that we become a little more aggressive in our style of defense to not only get better, but to help the offense. I mean, what do we have, like 3 interceptions this year in a 16-game schedule? 3 interceptions, I think. I mean, how many fumbles did we cause and recover? That's a matter of aggression. When players don't play aggressively, you don't get plays like that. When players don't tackle, you don't get plays like that. I am sick and tired of watching Philadelphia Eagles linebackers, especially the linebackers and defensive backs run up and dive at guys' feet or come up and try to hit them with a shoulder and think they're just going to fall down because you want them to fall down. No, you got to put them down, and you got to teach them how to put them down, and you got to teach them how to play aggressively. Listen, you're watching the Seth Joyner Show. This is Talk to Him Tuesday. Another announcement to make as we wind down the season. I'm going to still be here each week doing the show. We'll talk about various things. There'll be probably some changes, down the road. I think that we need to expand the show. And listen, I love you guys, and I appreciate, the Philly love. But, there's a whole wide NFL that's going on out there that we probably need to talk about and widen our scope a little bit. The primary focus will still be the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll earmark a specific amount of time to going over, everything Eagles. But I think we need to expand the show and talk more NFL. So that's that. We also, because this is the last show connected to the end of the regular season for the Eagles, we are doing a giveaway today. We're actually going to do 2 to end the season. Go over to Facebook, follow me on Facebook at the Seth Joyner Show. You can also follow me at my personal one. You can follow me on Twitter to get the details on how to win a signed mini helmet and a signed Eagles football jersey. We will announce those winners on Friday of this week. Well, with it being Talk to Him Tuesday, you guys talk to me. And listen, I see all your comments. I just have some things I had to get off my chest. I know you guys, some of you guys referred to my comments on post game. Maybe it was a little harsh, maybe it wasn't. I said, what I should have said was, listen, as proud as I was as a former Philadelphia Eagle, when the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017, I was just as embarrassed for the city of Philadelphia watching that game on Sunday night, to watch the Eagles just give it away, stop competing. Football's unlike any other sport. And I don't care about draft picks. You can talk about draft picks all you want. We can talk about draft picks, and how well we've drafted. That's a topic of conversation. But a football player only gets 16 games every year. And the average lifespan of a football player is 3.5 seasons. I can tell you with certainty, whether it was the starters, the backups, or the practice squad players, those players did not take that field with the intention of losing and throwing that football game. And I'm embarrassed for them. I'm embarrassed for the city of Philadelphia that Doug Peterson put them in that position. Listen, you play to win the football game. Someone's out there trying to take your head off. Someone's out there trying to take your manhood. Someone's out there, trying to exert their will above yours. And why not go into the offseason with a good feeling about yourself as you try to rebuild a 4-11-1 team? For three spots? For 3 spots. At the end of the day, are you really going to is one player going to make you that much better? Because I don't believe that it benefits the Eagles to take a pick at number 6. I think it benefits them to trade out of the pick and get multiple picks, because there are multiple holes to fill and multiple things that need to be fixed. So listen, I was just upset about what I witnessed. That Doug Peterson would put a guy in the game that hasn't played a game in almost 2 years in a game with an opportunity to win. And then he systematically goes interception, fumble, game over. Okay. I had problems with that. I'm sure a lot of you guys have problems with it. I'm sure a lot of you guys are saying that, hey, they did the right thing. They needed to lose that game. Okay. But at the end of the day, as a football player, I can assure you, I have never been on a team. I've never seen anything like that in my 30-something years being associated with the NFL. And I've never played with a bunch of guys that would lay down and give a game away like that. Okay. In the infamous words of Herman Edwards, you play to win the game. Okay, let's get to some of you guys' questions here. Some of you guys have posted and it's gone above what I can see. I'm really going to rely on my producer, Derek Stevenson, to just start throwing me some questions here. And I'll read them right off the board and answer them. You can also give me a call at 361-857-9847. My producer will send you a link. You can click the link and you can come on and join me and ask me your question. We'll try to, I know we're up against time. I was just talking, but we'll try to get 3, maybe 4 you guys in for a question if we can just roll them. Okay. Jonathan on screen wants to know, do you think we'll try and take a wide receiver with the 6th pick? I'm going to keep these questions short. Listen, the Eagles have drafted, I want to say 9 wide receivers in the last 6 drafts. So I don't believe that that's the move that you make. What I believe is that you go and find somebody to teach these wide receivers how to play the game. They have too many holes on the offensive line. They need depth, and they've got too many holes and too many questions on the defensive line. They need depth and they need production there. Okay. They need a linebacker. To me, that's more important than spending the sixth pick overall on Devonta Smith. You go and you get him. And if you coach him like every other wide receiver that we've drafted in the last 6 drafts, what are we going to get out of him? If you come in and we're going to run the same offense, what are we going to get out of it? Okay. So we've invested a lot of, listen, the last 36 players that the Philadelphia Eagles drafted, okay, 20 of them were offensive players. 3 wide receivers last year. They traded for one in the offseason that opted out, okay? They brought Deshaun Jackson back. Come on. Don't tell me that the Eagles haven't tried to fix the situation, okay? You got to get players to perform on the field. The attempts have been made, but those guys haven't realized their potential, okay? And as much as you want to put it on Howie, the only thing Howie can do is draft him. Now the coaches got to bring him in and coach him up and get him ready, okay? Let me see. What else we got here? God, you guys are firing them at me. Let's see. Sorry about that, D. Emilio wants to know that tight end out of Florida might not be a bad idea considering the decline of Ertz. Well, hey, listen. That's a whole nother ball of wax. Because, realistically, everyone's talking about, Zach Ertz being out of here. Zach Ertz has another year on his deal. Are you going? And let's talk about how many offensive players the Eagles have drafted in the last 2 drafts. You got to spend some draft capital on the defensive side of the ball as well. You're already out of balance 20 offensive players to 16 players over the last 6 drafts, I want to say. But at the end of the day, would he be a great addition? Yeah, probably. I mean, if you're going to move on from Zach Ertz, Probably. But the question for me is, will he block? I don't know that he's not another guy that's like Zach Ertz that just wants to catch balls and will not block. I don't know that. So, I mean, listen, he's a great player, Pitts. He's a great football player. But I'm not so sure, and I'm not 100% convinced that the Eagles are completely done with Zach Ertz or Carson Wentz. Who knows? Okay. Crystal wants to know, what do you think about Alex Singleton? Is he a keeper? And do you think the Eagles will finally address the linebacker position this year? Listen, they addressed it last year. They drafted two guys that weren't high draft picks, but Davion Taylor out of Colorado didn't play much at all. And, Sean Bradley, out of Temple. I thought that he had an opportunity to come in and steal some playing time, but neither one of those guys could get much playing time, even with all the injuries at the linebacker position. Listen, I love Alex Singleton. I've been saying for the last 2 years that that's a guy that deserves some playing time. Why it is that, it's always in the 11th hour that, the Eagles make the necessary adjustments and bring in, guys along. Last year was all the guys that performed well the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season that have been languishing, on the practice squad, and all of a sudden they got their shot and performed extremely well. This year it's a guy like Alex Singleton. With all the injuries at linebacker, Jim Schwartz was almost forced to play him, and the guy comes in and he just plays solid football. It's a good aggressive player. Now, he could play better. He could tackle better. But overall, I would say from the standpoint of, how he's played in comparison to what everybody else has done this year, he is a keeper. I think he's a guy that you bring in, you allow him to compete, with the top guys next year. Listen, I'm a big proponent of competing. The cream always rises to the top when you're competing. I'm not a big fan of always, you've got guys that are mainstays in your defense. Like Fletcher Cox is not coming in, and Brandon Graham's not coming in having to compete for their job. Okay. They're all pros. They've already proven what they can do. But when you got positions where you're just giving guys a job, based upon what you see, in training camp or in OTAs without the benefit of everyone having the same chance to go out and compete in a game type situation, I don't think you do yourself much service, because not all players are the same. Some players are great practice players, but they get in their own head in the game. Some guys are average practice players, and yet you put them in the game and all of a sudden, boom, the light comes on, and they go at it. So I don't know. I like Alex Singleton, and I'd like to see, more of him in a starting role next year to see how he continues to progress, now that he's got some games under his belt. Lawrence Melton wants to know how I feel about Mike Conwell, linebacker coach from Tampa Bay as DC. The thing I like about that particular, option is that, he would be a disciple, from Todd Bowles. And I know that Todd Bowles is an aggressive style defensive coordinator, particularly, when he has all the pieces in place, he can be uber aggressive. I don't know enough about, how long he's been coaching, how well he's coached. And sometimes, you can look at a coach and you can look at a staff and you can see great players at that position. So, we're talking about Devin White and we're talking about Levante David. So you look at those guys and you see the success that they've had. And oftentimes, we want to attribute those successes to a coach. Sometimes it's valid. Sometimes the player is just a good player. Sometimes, listen, Levante David was already ascending before Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles got to Tampa Bay. Devin White, was a top linebacker coming out, already. He's already got some skill sets. Some guys come into the NFL and they're already prepared. It's like I used to say about Avonte Maddox. I believe that they messed Avonte Maddox up because the year that he took over for Ronald Darby, when Ronald Darby went out for the year, he was the most technically sound cornerback that we had on the football team. And then they came back the next year and they gave Ronald Darby his job back and they moved Avonte Maddox into slot. And he has not been the same player since they made that move. But my point is, when he got here, he was technically sound. You can see the decline since he's been here. And to me, that speaks to coaching. He's being asked to play a certain way and to discard some of the techniques and fundamentals that he was raised with that made him a good cornerback and has done more damage to, his overall growth than has been a benefit, and that I don't understand. I just, that I don't get. I just think that you have to have a situation, excuse me, you have to have a situation where you're always giving your players the best chance, the best opportunity to be successful and to continue to develop from the time that they're a rookie right on up through year 4 or 5. Because by the time you get to year 4 or 5, most of the development is already done. I'm of the opinion if a player plays consistently for 3 years, barring injuries, he is what he's going to be. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't get better. That doesn't mean that he can't search out what's necessary for him to get better in the offseason. But there's very few players that have that work ethic. They'll just stay with the coach that they're with and what that coach is giving them. I never subscribed to that because there were certain things when I came to the Philadelphia Eagles I couldn't do. I could play the run. I had good feet. I could cover a tight end and cover a running back. But what I could not do is I could not rush the passer because that skill set was never taught to me. So I went to work in the offseason to learn that, watching film, practicing moves and doing things that would make me a better player. As a pro player, those are the things that you have to do. You can't leave it all up to the coaches, but the coach also has to give you those tools to help you get there. And oftentimes when I watch this Philadelphia Eagles team, it's pretty apparent to me that they just don't. Okay. Next question. Sean and a couple of other people, while I was talking, my producer threw up some questions, and you guys are chiming in about this DC job. Listen, if that job was offered to me, I'd take it and bring in the requisite guys, to formulate the right defense to get this team and this defense where it needs to go. I think, but the most realistic evolution for me in a coaching world would be a linebacker coach. Now that I'm supremely confident. Not that I'm not confident that I could do the defensive coordinator job, because listen, I've played every defense known to man. Okay, I've played under some of the greatest minds that the NFL has ever seen. All of that stuff is right here, and I still got the paperwork if I need to refer back to it. But the more practical thing is, give me a group of young guys that I can shape and mold and teach those guys what I know about playing the position of linebacker. So I can train their eyes, so I can train their minds, so I can train their skill set to realize all the talent that's wrapped up within them. Now that's what I have a passion for. Defensive coordinator, if that comes down the road, absolutely. But you know what? Hey, if the job is offered, I take it. There's no doubt about it. Especially a coaching job with the Philadelphia Eagles. There's not a whole lot of organizations out there that I've said, yeah, I'm not interested in all of them. There's only a handful of them, and the situation needs to be the right situation. Okay, so now you guys know. All right, D, throw me another one. Let's see. My man Jeff Taylor, man. Let me just go ahead and give Jeff a shout out. Where is he at? Jeff said, let me make a couple of calls. I'll get you that DC job. Taylor Blitz Times has got me. And this guy has been a thorn in my side since the season began. I must give him credit because even before the season started, he called it. He said that Jalen Hurts will be a starter at some point during the season. I thought he was just flat out crazy. But stranger things have happened. That's why he likes to call himself the chancellor of football. Go figure. All right, D, give me another one. Okay, thoughts on Matt Patricia as the DC. I would say this: Bill Belichick's defenses, and Matt Patricia is a disciple of Bill Belichick style defense. They are not, in my opinion, an extremely aggressive style of defense unless they have to be. They're more bend but don't break, and they're a lot more strategic. Does anybody know for sure that Matt Patricia can bring all the things that he learned from Bill Belichick and implement them somewhere else? Listen, we've seen him implement it, under Bill Belichick in New England. We've seen him go to the Detroit Lions and fail miserably, not really creating this defensive juggernaut. So in light of those things, I'm not so sure that that's the decision that I'd go for. Because, they're a cover two defense. They can be, he can be strategic and tricky at times. But I just haven't seen the blitz package. I haven't seen the pressure package. I haven't seen the creativity, where you make an offense think that you're coming over here, look at the left hand while I do something else with the right hand. That I haven't seen out of Matt Patricia. Doesn't mean that he can't do it, but I'd much rather have a guy that I know that has the DNA of that than a guy that I'd have to guess about. Okay, Eric wants to know, are you concerned that Doug will ruin Jalen Hurts? Seemed to me they don't allow players to play to their strengths and try to fit everyone in one specific scheme. Eric, I'll say this. I believe that Doug Peterson fed Jalen Hurts Nick Foles' package. Everybody wants to complain that, the play calling changed. Doug gave, Jalen, different plays. Not necessarily. A lot of what you saw is some of the same things that Carson Wentz was asked to run. Now, were there some things that were different? Absolutely. Because all along, I said it way back in week 7, week 8. You have Nick Foles' package that Jalen Hurts can run. So put him in the game. Give him some of those. Go over and get some of those plays that he ran at Oklahoma and Alabama and implement those. That's what the NFL is starting to look like anyway. He remembers those plays, So that whole thing that he wasn't ready was absolute nonsense. Now, will Doug ruin him? If Doug doesn't get his run-pass priorities together, and I'm not confident that he will, then he may ruin him. Listen, you can't ask a quarterback to predictably throw the ball 40, 45 times every game. You're asking for trouble. And I can't understand why it is Doug doesn't see that. You've got a great running back in Miles Sanders, a great running back, who's been unutilized all season long. And you can talk about, he was injured at the beginning of the season, and then he had to work himself back into shape. But by the time he got to the end of the year, Miles Sanders should have been getting 20 to 25 touches a game. I can remember, not this game, but the previous game, the game against the Cowboys, Miles got 11 carries in the first half. And then he came back, he got 4 carries in the second half. Jalen Hurts' first start, 18 carries. I can assure you that all 18 of those carries were not called run plays. maybe 50%. I'll give you that. Okay. But at the end of the day, you've got running backs. Use your running backs. Even if you don't have success running the football, you still got to continue to try to run it, you know. And the problem with Doug is, you know, they'll start off running the ball real well, and then he starts to mix it in, which works. And then all of a sudden, at the end of all of a sudden, they get 2 or 3 plays where the run doesn't work and he abandons it. And now the quarterback's in a position where all he can do is throw. That's not beneficial for any quarterback, let alone, you know, Jalen Hurts or Carson Wentz, as we've seen. They got to run the ball. And if he doesn't, they're just not going to have success. That's just a fact. Jim wants to know what's your take on DJ and AJ returning or not next year, both injury prone. Interesting question. I think if you can deal Alshon, I think you make that move. I think he's a guy that, you know, you can get that production from someone else on the roster. You know, I think Whiteside's probably going to get an extra year. The fire is going to be under his behind to perform or to show up or get out next year. And I think that whatever it is that Alshon can offer you, you can get that, you know, out of a guy like Arthega Whiteside. You just got to figure out, you know, how to get his head right. As far as D-Jack is concerned, I see if I can get him to take a pay cut. If I can get him to take a pay cut, I bring him back. You know, listen, you know you're not going to get, you know, 16 games out of him. You know, a lot of the things were just freak accidents. You know, he gets hurt first week of the season, comes back, you know, and I don't know if you guys paid attention the second time when he got hurt. It was the stupidest thing that you can ever imagine. It got him hurt. D-Jack is 30 years old, man. Why you put him back there to return punts when you drafted a kid who's got punt return abilities? So when D-Jack went on the injured list for the second time, it was because of a darn punt return. Makes no sense. You know that the guy's already susceptible to injuries. Why would you put him back there in a situation where you know he's not going to fair catch the ball and he may put himself in danger? Sometimes you got to protect players from themselves. But dude can still run. He can still strike fear in the offenses. And if you can get guys like, you know, Quez Watkins, and you can get guys like Jalen Reagor, you know, to step up their game, it only benefits you to have that speed on the field. But I don't go into next year with the notion that he's going to play a big role. You have him there as a veteran presence. You have him there as a guy that you can plug in and play if you can get him at the right price. Now, I'm not sure what his salary number is, but $8, $9, $10 million? No, not for 8 games. Not happening. Okay, that's just my opinion. But if I can bring him back, I'm trying to bring him back at a minimized number. Okay. Scott wants to know, do you mean guys being in their head during the game? No. Hey, listen, when I'm talking about J.J. Arthega being in his own head, as a rookie, most rookies already come in with a little bit of self-doubt. I can remember the first preseason game I played. I walked out on Veteran Stadium, and I'm looking up at the sky, and I'm looking, you know, at the crowd. And then I look down, and I'm seeing guys on the other end that I used to watch, guys that I was fans of, you know, when I was in high school and college. And the thought entered my head, what in the hell are you doing here? Okay. So it took some time for me to find my confidence. When I got cut and I came back and I started playing special teams and started thriving on special teams, and then I got my opportunity to actually play, by my 3rd or 4th game starting, the light went off. And I was like, oh, I belong here. Not only do I belong here, not only can I survive here, I can thrive here. Okay, it happens with almost every rookie, where you have that little bit of self-doubt, where you're in your own head. But there always comes that moment where, you know, you realize that you can play. that you can play at the highest level with the best of the best, you know. And I think more than anything, that's JJ Arcega-Whiteside's problem, is that he's in his own head. He's got to get out of his own way and allow what talent and ability he has, you know, to shine through and get the job done. He's shown in flashes here and there. I grant it, you know, granted, he hasn't been as a second round draft pick what everybody expected him to be, you know, but he's shown every once in a while in flashes over the last 2 years that he can make some plays, you know. Now he just needs someone to instill greater confidence in him. And then once he starts to believe in himself, then he'll start to make more plays and he'll do more. So when I talk about guys being in their own head, that's where I'm going. Last question, guys. Timothy Shaw wants to know, what do I think of Louis Riddick as a player personnel? He was in charge of scouting when we went to the bowl. I'm not so sure that he was still here when we went to the Super Bowl. I think he was already gone by then. Listen, I got a ton of respect for Louis Riddick. I actually like him in the role of GM more than I do player personnel. I think he's that good. That being said, I don't think that, you know, he leaves ESPN and his cushy job, you know, to come and be someone's player personnel guy. Been there, done that. Why would he go back and do that again? I really believe that if there's not a GM job somewhere for him in the NFL, and there should be based upon his knowledge and his experience, that he just does not leave ESPN for any other executive job other than the GM position. Okay. Well, listen, guys, that wraps it for this week. Thank you guys again, you know, for joining us. Happy New Year's to you guys. And I forgot to say Happy New Year's before the last show was over, so I'm saying it now. Blessings to you guys, and much more blessed 2021. Don't forget to go to Facebook, go to Twitter, get the details for the giveaway on Friday, January 8th. We're giving away two giveaways. We've got a signed helmet, signed mini helmet, and two signed mini helmets, and two signed Eagles footballs that we're giving away. Those will be our end of the year gifts to you guys as a thank you for supporting the Seth Joyner Show. And you know, we will be back here next week talking a little bit of Eagles. I'm pretty sure that the news will continue to ramp up. There will continue to be more information that comes out about the desires of Carson Wentz and what the Eagles are going to do with him. So, and we got playoffs starting, you know, so next week, you know, I'll be doing a playoff breakdown, talking about, you know, the 6 teams that participate, you know, the 12 teams, I should say, to participate in the super wild card weekend with the added team this year. Hey, listen, as always, you guys be good to each other. Take care of each other, but most importantly, make sure that you love each other. Be happy, be good. I'll see you guys here next week. Peace out.